This is AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Shymansky. And today I'm joined from one of our book club members and a returning personality to Book Talk on AMI Audio, Marcia Yale. How's it going, Marcy?
That's good. How's it going with you?
Doing all right. The first thing I want to know, because this is the first time I'm talking to you, how often do you read? Like, what are your reading habits? How long have you been reading?
I've been reading since I was very, very, very young. Probably when I first learned to read, I used to devour Braille books. And I used to read at a higher level. I remember in grade 5, my parents had to give me permission to read a book. If they didn't give me the permission, the school wouldn't let me read it because it was a very serious book.
You were one of those kids.
Oh yeah,
I love to climb up a tree and read a book when your parents didn't want to.
Yeah, that's about it. I've been reading a lot, and when I have downtime, that's what I like to do. I don't binge watch things. I have to force myself to watch anything on Netflix or anything like that. But reading, whenever I have downtime, I'm reading a book.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because sometimes we come across people who kind of come to reading later on in life. And I always find that's a beautiful story. But for the people who have been reading for their entire lives, incredible perspective. Like, do you find your tastes have changed?
Yeah. Yeah, right now I love mindless entertainment, romance.
Really? You've gone more to the pop stuff?
Yeah, well, one of the books that we'll talk about is a little different than what I usually read, but usually it's mindless entertainment, and romances with happily ever afters are just the ticket.
I've heard it described as a schlock literature. The publishing industry is really embracing it. Like this, it's really is just for fun, and there's no more of this pretense that literature and just books and publishing is this intellectual thing that smart people do. Like it's fun, it's entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But there are still people who can't write, and I will still ditch a book if the grammar is horrible or if the spelling, if they've forgotten to do a proofread. I will ditch a book if I just can't. I mean, it's not just if the characters don't interest me. Sometimes it's if the way the author writes just turns me right off. I'll ditch a book.
Yeah, well, just because a book is okay, you call it mindless entertainment. I don't think that's very fair.
Oh, some of it's mindless, believe me.
Okay. I'm going to call it popular literature instead. Okay. Just because it's popular literature, it doesn't mean that you get the green light to not proofread your stuff. Like it still needs to be well written, right?
Yeah.
The difference with pop literature is that it's approachable. That's the main thing. It's like pop music. It's just more approachable to more people.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
So let's hammer down on your reading preferences, and you gave us 5 of your most recent notable reads, and these also function as recommendations too. People who are listeners to the show know where this is going. We're doing a rapid fire review. So let me explain the rules to you, Marcy, and also to the people who've never seen it before. Rapid fire review is when our guest sends us 5 of their most recent notable reads. We're gonna go through them one by one. I'm going to read the title and the author, and then Marcy, you're going to hear a 15-second countdown. During that countdown, you have to tell us everything you want us to know about that book. You only get 15 seconds per book. We go through all 5, and then afterwards, you can elaborate further on whichever ones. The idea is that you guess what we need to know, boil it down to the essentials. What do we need to know about these books? Do you recommend them? Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's book 1 on your list. You gave us Anchored by Marika Ray.
So it's a summer fling about a woman who comes from the city to a small town, and her grandmother is sick, and she falls in love with her physical therapist. Not the grandmother, the granddaughter does. Falls in love, and yeah.
It's a fling book. Is what you're telling me. Is this mindless entertainment?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, got it. The next one is Where I Belong, Small Town to Great Big Sea by Alan Doyle.
So this is Alan Doyle of Great Big Sea, and he takes you from Petty Harbor in Newfoundland, where he grew up, to basically making it in the big time with an amazing rock band. And you get all the funny stories about how he grew up in this small town.
Okay, so this is a classic Canadian rock star memoir. We've gotten quite a few of those in the past couple of years, but I've heard good things about this one. We'll get back to it. Number three is Reticent Hawk by uh, Gwen McNamee.
So this is about one of the people in this whole series. He is basically social averse, can't stand crowds, and he falls in love with the wrong person because she's the older daughter and she's the. Can I finish that sentence?
Yes, you can go ahead and finish.
Sister of his best friend.
For the people who have never done this before, it's really hard to do rapid fire review. That doesn't mean I'm going to let up, though. The next one on the list, number 4, is Reckless Hawk by Gwen McNamee.
So again, this is one of the others in this series, and she gets pregnant by someone she shouldn't have even been with, and then she ends up having to have her baby delivered by the one she really loves, and he's a doctor, and he doesn't know who her baby's real daddy is.
Oh my god, this all seems so melodramatic. Okay, when you put it that way, I'm sure there's more to it. Hold on. There's one more book in the series here, Rebel Hawk by Gwen McNamee.
So this is the fighter of the group, and he's a boxer, and he gets injured, and he's now got to figure out what the heck he's going to do about his life. And this young woman comes back into it, and he fell in love with her a long, long time ago, and now he's her. She's his physical therapist.
Oh my god, that's the second book in this list
I
that has to do with
know,
falling in
really.
love with a physical therapist. Do women really like physical therapists? Is that like a really attractive thing?
I don't know. No, well, the fighter sure loves her.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so these last 3 books on the list were all from the same series. How about we start there? Because I understood the first 2 pretty well. What's the deal
Okay.
with this series? Tell us more about
Okay,
this series by Gwen McNamee.
so this is a series that's in 2 generations, and the first few, let me think if I can remember. The first one is Savage Hawk, and they all end with an E for those of you who are listening. It's Hawke. Savage Hawk is the first one. So you get the first, they're called now, I think, the Billionaires of New Orleans. So they all take place in New Orleans. And it's all about this family that is sort of on the outside of organized crime. So they sort of are, sort of aren't. You're not really sure whether you should really hope for them to get, to be successful or not. But in the end, they are successful, and so you root for them. And so there are about 4 or 5 in the first series, and then the second series, which is the Legacy, the Next Generation, is where the 3 books that
Oh.
that I talked about come from. And so now you're seeing the sons and daughters of the first generation and how they deal with life. And most of them work in the business of the Hawk family, and they have hotels and clubs and all sorts of things. But
Huh.
the rebel is the fighter, and so he's a boxer, so he doesn't work in the business. And the reckless, she works in a cafe that's run by the business. And reticent, he sort of works when he can, but he's a writer and he keeps to himself. But he was sort of a foster of the family. They took him in. Two of
Oh.
the family took him in because he was basically homeless. I can't remember exactly what his family background it was, but he lost it and ended up with the Hawk family. So he's been a part of the family, and then he marries, and he falls in love with Angelina, who is the oldest daughter of one of the Hawk girls. And it's just, The neat thing about series that I love is that you get to know people throughout the series and then they finally get their own book. But by the time they get their own
Mm.
book, you know a little bit about them. So you sort of have an an added reason to read that book because you finally say, "Oh, good, they're finally giving him or her their own book."
The attention they deserve. I know what you
Right.
mean. I read
Yeah,
quite a few series too, and I always describe it like it's just more of a good thing.
it
If you
is.
like the characters, you just get more of them. One of the frustrations with starting a new book every time is getting to know new characters. There's something comforting and easy about already being familiar with characters. Is they're like your friends.
The trouble is when you start a series in the middle without realizing that that's what you've done. So I just I just finished a compendium of little books. So it was one huge book. It was called Let It Snow, and I got it from one of the lists that I'm on. I get a lot of free books, and it had tons of novels in it. And some of them were firsts of series, some of them were standalones, and some of them were the middle of a series. And now I have to go back and find the first one and the second one. So sometimes what happens when you end up in the middle of a series is that you end up spending more money because you have to catch up.
You
It's
got to do your pre-research,
that's
your
right.
pre-reading.
That's right. And then you have to continue the series after the book that you stumbled upon.
So this
Uh,
this series about the Hawk family. What's the name of the series for the audience?
I believe it's called Billionaires of New Orleans now.
Oh, that's a
Not
good
without
title.
the now
Hmm.
at the end.
Hmm.
Because it used to just be called the Hawk Family Saga or just the Hawk Family. And then she retitled them and I think she put brand new covers on all the ebooks and
Mm.
um,
The Billionaires of New Orleans.
yeah.
Very cool. So like if you had to boil down the main selling point of the series, like what do you like about it? What's the selling point?
Character development, New Orleans, which is fascinating because you get
Mm.
to sort of get a feel for the city. Um, yeah, it's a family. It's a family that has its ups and downs, and there's a little bit of killing, and not a lot, but a little. Um,
A
and
little killing's always fun.
yeah, there's a little,
Everyone's a fan of a little killing,
yeah,
you know?
a little killing, a little bit of suspense, and a lot of romance, and yeah, it's definitely for the 18 plusers out there. It is not, I
Mm.
wouldn't say it's a sweet romance. They do have steam, just to let you
Mm.
know.
Okay, well, how about we talk about another book of yours that actually does have a sweet romance? Anchored by Marie Carré. Like
Well, that I wouldn't call that sweet either. It's got
you wouldn't call it
steam.
sweet?
Oh no,
Uh,
no, 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 no.
what would you call it?
It's got steam. It's got summer steam.
Oh,
Yes,
it's summer steam. Is it
yeah.
smutty?
Not as smutty as the Hawks, but it's got it. Yeah, I shouldn't say this, but I sweet books sometimes leave me, yeah, like something's missing because it's not real. I mean,
It's got that
people,
sickly sweet quality,
yeah,
right? There's no
yeah,
depth. And like
no,
it's nice, but it's like
yeah,
I need
no,
something more to chew on, right? It's like it's the
that's
equivalent
right.
of a very basic cake,
That's
right?
right.
Like
That's
you want
right.
something a little denser with a bit more
That's right.
chew.
Because life has spice. Life is not
Life does have
sweet.
spice,
Life
and
has
so do books.
spice. Yes.
So let me read the synopsis for Anchored by Marie Carré because whoever wrote this needs a raise.
I know.
Um, I didn't mean to blurt out that the ridiculously handsome physical therapist from Sunny Shore Retirement Home is my fiance. Spoiler alert, he's not. But hey, at least my grandmother, the one recently diagnosed with dementia, is thrilled for me, which makes lying to her face so much worse. Especially since my actual love life has sunk to the bottom of the lake. My favorite memories are those uh, my favorite memories are those magical summers at grandma's cabin on Anchor Lake. Cannonballs, sunburns, and my first crush. Well, guess who's now renting that very cabin and strutting around like a men's fitness magazine cover? Yep, my childhood crush. aka the hot physical therapist turned fiance. He comes with bonus muscles and designer glasses that make him look like Clark Kent's hotter cousin, and apparently he's allergic to shirts. I'm not complaining, but my ability to form coherent sentences sure is.
Yeah, and that one I actually found out about through her newsletter. So I'm on Marie Carré's newsletter list. That's the best way to get books if you like to read is to sign up for authors' newsletters because they'll turn you on to other authors and they usually give
Mm,
freebies. And so I get a lot of my books for free. And I noticed that they
you're kidding.
no, I'm
Wow,
serious. I
cool.
get a lot of, and the
Huh.
trouble is that sometimes they are the third or fourth book in a series, which means that I have to go and look on Amazon and see, oh, okay. Now, is that part of Kindle Unlimited? That's another thing I recommend. It's Kindle Unlimited if you read ebooks. It's great. Some, not all books are there, but there are enough to make it worth your while.
That sounds
Um,
like a good marketing technique to
yeah.
give the third book of a series for free, and
Yep,
then you almost feel obligated to buy
that's
one or
right.
two.
That's right. Or you look on
That's
Kindle
genius.
Unlimited and breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, good. I don't have to pay for these.
So this first book, Anchored by Marika Ray, like, do you want to elaborate on this one? Because
It was
it
cute.
sounds like sweet romance.
Yeah, it was really, it was, your typical citified woman who comes to the small town where she spent her childhood summers. And there's always an end date in her mind. As soon as she figures out what's going on with her grandmother, she's going to go back to her job in the city. And of course, well, I won't spoil it, but that's always in the background. And so every time she's getting close to the guy, she's always thinking, well, but there's an end date, the end of the summer, I'm going to go back. So it's there's, like I said, I love character development, and I love the backstory that you get with some books. Some you don't, and some the characters are so shallow that you just can't get into them. But these guys, I liked this book. It was good.
Is it a
But I
summary? Would
would.
you describe it
Oh,
as a summary, like an easy, cozy reader? Does it have more depth than that?
it has some more depth. It talks about dementia a bit. It talks about
Mm.
working at an old folks home because the therapist works at an old folks home. So you get to see a bit of that, and but
Hmm.
it's a charming read, I would say. Though I
If
think
it
though I
feels if it feels to the audience that there's like an oversaturation of romance books or like an talk about romance nowadays, you're not wrong. Romance is by far the best-selling genre in publishing, and it's not even close.
I can believe that because we all
Mm.
need some romance in our lives, and some of us are not getting any, and so we have to read somewhere about it and sort of live vicariously through the books we read.
That's one of the beautiful things about books. I find it's easier to have that vicarious experience than it is with any other kind of media, like movies and TV shows. You
That's
can
right.
often because the series are just longer and you have more material to work with, even a standalone book, it has more content than an actual movie, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Oh, definitely. I mean, when you
Mm.
when you make a movie out of a book, you have to lose something because it takes you longer than 2 hours to read the thing. and
So,
the real and the
romance.
books are, the books are longer than the movie's ever going to be.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to compare the length of a book to a movie because some books are like denser than movies
Yeah.
and some movies are a lot denser than others or more like slow paced. Um, but I generally agree with that statement that usually a book is more dense than a
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
in
well, you
terms of
can't.
content.
Well, and some of it you just can't replicate. You know.
You can try.
Yeah.
You can try. There's some pretty
There's-
heady concepts, and like internal dialogue is really hard to represent on the screen, right?
yeah.
And one of the big no-nos in movies is like voiceover.
Oh
Like
yeah.
people really hate that, so if you don't really do that, it's a big faux pas. But anyways, romance is a really big genre in publishing right now. But in Canada specifically, memoirs, specifically from famous Canadians, consistently sell very well. And you highlighted one of these. This was the second one on your list, "Where I Belong: Small Town to Great Big Sea" by Alan Doyle.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on this one?
So this one is actually the first of. There is going to be a fourth. It's coming out in the fall, and I've already pre-ordered it. He has two others. That one that basically continues the memoir, so it gives you the early
Oh,
years of Great Big Sea. This
it's
one,
like a memoir series.
yes, yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So
So sorry. Is this one the first?
this is the first one, and it
Okay.
goes
Okay.
till basically till they get their first real gig. They get started. So
Okay. Okay.
he meets Sean McCann and the other two whose names I'm sorry are right out of my head. And they form the band. In fact, he is the last one to he's sort of joining Sean McCann's band, and then they change up a few of the other players and end up making Great Big Sea. And it really gives you his childhood too. Like it starts at the beginning of
Hmm.
his life and shows you Petty Harbor, Newfoundland, and him going to school and walking everywhere and the different characters that live in the town. And then the second book continues on and tells you about, the basically how Great Big Sea got really big and how
Hmm.
they would take planes to get places instead of driving places, and they would be in great hotels instead of in little little motels. It's amazing, and Alan Doyle can write, so the style is just it's amazing. It's a lyric storyteller at his best. And
Okay. There's different
yeah,
ways of approaching memoirs because some people who are writing their own memoirs, they will go out of their way to write the way that they talk, especially if they've got, like, a public presence already, they wanna maintain that. Um, but though the direction that Doyle took here, it seems to be more lyrical. It's a written s and it's like a storytelling style of memoir. Is that correct?
it's amazing.
Mm.
It flies by, and it just the way he tells stories. I mean, you feel like you're there. So
It feels like
it,
fiction.
it feels like you're transported to Petty Harbor, and you're following
Mm.
him along on his journey, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's the true Newfoundlander, and I wish I had read it before. I saw him live at Deerhurst near where I
Oh,
live.
cool.
Um, just a couple of months ago, and I had no idea he had written a book. But afterwards, I found out that he had written three, and so I read them. Oh yeah, and the third one of his books is just a collection of different stories from all over in his life, like throughout his life, and from other people that he wrote as a sort of to help you get your mind out of things when the pandemic was going on. And I'm thinking that the fourth book that's coming out in the fall is probably going to take him from the end of Great Big Sea's, full career into his solo career and what he's doing now and all of that.
Wow,
So I'm looking forward to it.
this guy's documented his entire life
Yeah, I
from
don't know
start to
how he does
finish.
it. I honestly, I people keep telling me I should write my own, and I can't remember what happened 3 days ago. You think I'm going to try and recreate dialogue from 25 years ago or 30 years ago? Forget it. Not going to happen.
takes a good memory, where it's one of those things that makes me wonder if he's planned on writing a memoir for years and years and years, and has been slowly compiling all of these stories that he wants to tell. Now, one of the things I find interesting about this story is that he came from a small town, and those stories of people who make it big coming from small towns always fascinates me because and this is going to be a bit of a controversial statement. Um, I think that if you grow up in a small town, it automatically makes you a more interesting person. And I'm saying this as someone who grew up in Ottawa and lives in Toronto now. And there's just something about living in a small town that it makes your lived experience so unique compared to people who live in the city. Life is more homogenous in the city. Every small town is different in its own little way. And there's just so many stories that come out of small towns that just don't from cities. You know what I mean?
And everybody knows each other, and so
Yes,
there's much more camaraderie
there is.
and life. You know, everybody is in everybody else's business, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But it's just, yeah, when you grow up in the city, there's just too many people to make I mean, I grew up in Toronto. I now live in a small town, but I grew up
Mm.
in Toronto.
Thank you so much for your time. We're gonna make sure to include the your 5 selections in the podcast description and the YouTube video description as well. We'll have you on again sometime soon, okay?
Great. Thanks.
Awesome. That was Marcia Yale. She's a part of our book club here for Rapid Fire Review. And that's all the time we have for today's AMI Audio Digest. The show airs on weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and repeats every 6 hours, but we also make ourselves easy to find. We're on all the big podcasting platforms, and that includes YouTube. You can email us your feedback at audiobookrareview@ami.ca with all your feedback. We want to hear from you. You can also request to, if you want to come and do a rapid fire of your own, we would be very much open to that. That would be awesome. Also, follow us on Instagram at AMI Audiobook Review. That's at AMI Audiobook Review. I'm Jacob Szymanski. You were listening to AMI Audiobook Review. Thanks for listening.